I walked up the steps to my son's house with a box of cookies in one hand and a small Christmas gift in the other. Snow clung to my coat. The lights inside flickered warm through the windows. For a moment, I let myself think I was welcome. I knocked once. No one opened. I turned the handle and stepped inside because I heard voices and laughter. The living room was full of gold lights, a decorated tree, and Clara's family sitting comfortably at the table. I stood there long enough for someone to notice. Clara looked up first. Her smile faded the second her eyes landed on me. "You didn't tell her?" she murmured toward Daniel without lowering her voice. Daniel stiffened in his chair. He didn't stand. He didn't walk toward me. He just stared like he'd been caught doing something he knew was wrong. I cleared my throat. "I brought dessert and a few things for the kids." No one moved. Clara leaned back in her seat. "Helen, this dinner is for family." And I tightened my grip on the cookie box. "I am family." Clara let out a soft laugh. "You know what I mean." The room went quiet. Forks paused in midair. Even the children lowered their voices. Daniel finally rose from his chair, but not to hug me. His eyes darted to Clara, then back to me. "Mom, maybe tonight isn't the right time." I felt the air shift around me, like I had stepped into a place where I no longer existed. "What are you talking about?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "We planned something different this year." "You planned it without me?" My voice stayed level. I never raised it. I never needed to. Clara crossed her arms. "You always make things tense. Tonight is supposed to be peaceful." My jaw locked. "I walked here through the snow because my son invited me last week." Daniel swallowed hard. "Things changed." "What changed?" I asked. Clara answered for him. "We want a quieter Christmas. Just us. No drama. No interruptions. No unexpected visits." I felt every word land on my skin like cold needles. I placed the cookie box on the countertop. "I didn't come here to cause anything." Clara's gaze slid over me like I was a stranger. "Look, Helen, we're trying to build our own traditions. You should understand that." Daniel's voice lowered. "Mom, please don't make this harder." "I haven't said anything," I responded. He exhaled sharply. "Just, please leave for tonight. We'll talk another time." I looked at him carefully, studying the face I once held when he was a baby, the boy who used to run down the stairs on Christmas morning shouting my name. That boy wasn't here anymore. "What exactly are you ashamed of?" I asked quietly. Daniel's cheeks reddened, but he didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence told me everything. Behind him, Clara's father muttered, "This is uncomfortable." Clara didn't hide her smirk. I straightened my back. "I brought gifts." Daniel shook his head. "Just go home. We'll figure something out later." "Later," I repeated. "When it's convenient for your wife." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You're proving our point." I didn't flinch. "No, I'm proving yours." Daniel stepped closer to me, but not with affection. More like someone guiding a stranger toward the door. "Mom, please." My pulse slowed, not quickened. A strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes right before the truth reveals itself. "I see," I whispered. He reached for the door. "It's snowing. You should go before it gets worse." I didn't move at first. I let the silence stretch long enough for him to feel it. Long enough for Clara to look annoyed, long enough for everyone to pretend they weren't staring while fully staring. Then I nodded once. I walked out into the cold without raising my voice. Snow touched my hair and melted instantly against my skin. Behind me, the door closed with a soft click, too soft for the damage it caused. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in air that felt sharper than usual. I looked through the window one last time. They had already returned to the table. No one looked back. No one noticed I was gone. I stepped off the porch and whispered to myself, that night I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was the mistake they wanted to forget. The snow kept falling. My footsteps cracked against the icy walkway. I held my coat tight, not out of fear or heartbreak, but out of something else, something I would understand only hours later. When the cold finally reached my bones, I opened my bag and found the one thing I had left, the silver card. I closed my fingers around it and kept walking. The cold hit me as soon as I stepped off the porch. The wind pushed against my coat, and for a moment I stood there without moving. I wasn't frozen by the weather. I was frozen by the way my son closed the door without looking back. I walked down the street slowly, each step crunching against the snow. Christmas lights blinked in windows around me, warm and bright, as if the world was celebrating something I no longer belonged to. Halfway down the block, I stopped under a street lamp. The light flickered over the snow and over my hands. My fingers were stiff, but I reached into my bag. I wasn't looking for my phone. I wasn't looking for keys. I knew exactly what I wanted. The silver card. My husband gave it to me before he died. For years, it stayed wrapped in a small piece of paper inside my drawer. I never used it. I never even asked why he insisted I keep it close. I only remembered his voice on the last night he could still speak clearly. If you ever lose everything, use this. At the time, I didn't understand what lose everything meant. Tonight, standing in the snow with no place to go and no family who wanted me, I finally did. I held the card up toward the light. The metal caught the glow from the street lamp, sharp and cold. My breath formed a small white cloud. "Michael, what did you leave me?" I whispered. Across the street, a couple laughed while carrying Christmas bags into their house. Their happiness didn't sting. It simply reminded me that mine had been taken long before tonight. I tucked the card back into my coat and kept walking. My steps were slow, measured, not because I was tired, but because I was thinking. Every detail of tonight replayed in my mind. Clara's glare, Daniel's hesitation, the way everyone at that table looked at me like I had arrived uninvited to my own life. A bus passed by, splashing slush near the curb. I didn't step back. I just watched it go. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to avoid inconvenience. There was nothing left to protect. I reached the corner and stopped again. Snowflakes landed on the collar of my coat. My hands were cold, but my mind was clear. He planned this, I murmured to myself, thinking of Michael. You knew something would happen. I pulled the card out again and turned it over, looking for clues. It was simple. Silver, unmarked, except for a faint engraving of the bank's emblem. Not a debit card, not a credit card. Something else. Something older. My fingers traced the edge of the metal. It felt heavier than it should be. A car slowed near me. The driver lowered his window. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need a ride?" I shook my head once. "I'm fine." He nodded and drove off. I stared at the snow-covered sidewalk. "Fine," I repeated quietly, though the word didn't match the night. Another block. Another row of houses glowing with Christmas decorations. As I passed one house, I caught my reflection faintly in a window. Hair damp from snow, eyes tired but alert, shoulders squared. Not defeated. Not tonight. I approached an empty bus stop and sat down. The bench was cold through my coat, but I stayed. A streetlight buzzed overhead. I opened my hand and looked at the card again. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not sadness. Awareness. Michael didn't leave this card as a sentimental memory. He left it as a tool, a choice, a way out. I remembered the last Christmas we spent together. He was already weak, but he still looked at me with that sharp, searching gaze. "You're stronger than you think," he told me while holding my wrist gently. "And one day, you'll need to be." At the time, I laughed it off. I thought he was afraid of leaving me alone. Tonight, I realized he was warning me. A wind gust pushed against my coat. I stood up again. I couldn't sit still anymore. Sitting meant accepting what had happened. Walking meant moving toward an answer. I adjusted my scarf and headed toward downtown. The bank he used for decades opened early during the holidays. The card wasn't going to explain itself. I needed answers, real ones, not excuses from my son, not lies from my daughter-in-law. Truth from the only place Michael trusted. When I reached the main road, the snow grew heavier. Streetlights blurred behind the falling flakes. I wrapped my coat tighter around me and kept moving. Cars passed slowly. People hurried home with gifts and bags, all heading somewhere warm. I had nowhere warm to go, but I had a direction. I whispered, "If you left something for me, Michael, I'm ready to find it." I walked until my legs began to ache. By the time the sky started to lighten at the edges, I saw the bank's sign across the street. The building stood silent, tall, familiar, like a place that had been waiting for me. I stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at it. "This is where it begins," I breathed. I pulled the silver card from my pocket one more time. My fingers tightened around it. The metal felt colder than the air around me, as if it carried its own winter. Then I crossed the street. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me worth holding on to. Everything I needed was in front of me, locked inside a card I had never dared to use until the night my own son told me to leave. The bank opened at 7. I stood outside the doors at 6:58, holding the silver card tightly inside my glove. The sky was still dim, and the sidewalk glistened with fresh snow. When the doors unlocked, I stepped inside with the first small group of customers. Warm air hit my face. The lobby smelled of pine from the holiday decorations. A tall Christmas tree stood near the entrance, wrapped in gold ribbons, almost mocking me with its brightness. A banker at the front desk greeted everyone with a polite smile, but when I walked toward the counter, he paused. Maybe it was the snow on my coat or the expression I carried after a night of silence. He cleared his throat. "How can we help you this morning?" I reached into my coat and pulled out the silver card. "I need access to this." He glanced at it, then his eyebrows lifted slightly. "One moment, ma'am." He gestured toward a private window. "Mr. Reeves can assist you." I thanked him with a small nod and walked to the window. Mr. Reeves was a man in his 50s with silver streaks in his hair and gentle lines around his eyes. He gave me a courteous nod. "Good morning. Please place the card on the counter." I slid it toward him. The moment he picked it up, his expression changed. Not much, just enough for me to notice a flicker of recognition. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "My husband left it to me before he passed." He exhaled slowly, as if that answer confirmed something he had always suspected, but hoped wasn't true. "All right, let me run it through the system." He inserted the card into a small device connected to his computer. The screen lit up. A loading bar crawled across the top. He leaned closer, frowning slightly. I watched his reflection on the monitor. His eyes narrowed, then widened. His hands tightened on the desk. A soft beep sounded. Then everything changed. His shoulders went rigid. His pupils dilated. A wave of color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. He stood up so abruptly that his chair rolled back and hit the wall. He whispered, "Ma'am, you need to look at this, now." I stepped closer. The screen showed an account balance so large I blinked twice, convinced I was reading it wrong. "This can't be mine." He shook his head once. "It is." My fingers curled against the edge of the counter. "My husband died 10 years ago." Mr. Reeves swallowed hard. "I know. And this account was frozen exactly 10 years ago, the day after his death." "Frozen by who?" He hesitated. His jaw tightened. "The system logs show an administrator override. Someone with personal access to your husband's documents." I felt my stomach tighten. "Who?" He tapped the screen with a trembling finger. A name appeared in the corner of the log file. Daniel Hargrave, my son. My breath stopped for one brief second. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition. The kind that comes when puzzle pieces finally click into place. Mr. Reeves lowered his voice. "There's more. Look at the transaction history." He scrolled down. Line after line appeared. Large transfers, withdrawals, complex movements of funds, all routed into one destination, a corporation under Daniel's name. My pulse steadied, not racing, steady, cold, controlled. "He's been using this account for years," I murmured. Mr. Reeves nodded once. Every transfer was masked as a trust adjustment. It wouldn't appear suspicious unless someone had the original card. I looked at the silver rectangle still glowing in the machine. My husband had placed this in my hand a decade ago, knowing exactly what our son might do. Mr. Reeves continued searching through files. Your husband protected the account with multiple layers. That's why the system triggered an alert when this card was scanned. An alert? I asked. Yes. His eyes darted across the screen. The system automatically notifies a senior financial officer when a frozen legacy account is accessed. He paused. Meaning someone else will know you were here today. My grip tightened on the counter. Someone who shouldn't know? His throat bobbed. Correct. He opened another file, and his hand shook again. Ma'am, look at this. He turned the monitor slightly so I could see it clearly. It was an audio transcript, half corrupted, labeled with my husband's initials. A note appeared under it. Access requires original cardholder authorization. Unauthorized use detected. Risk level high. What does this mean? I asked. Mr. Reeves wiped his palms on his pants. It means your husband knew someone would try to access the account after his death, someone he didn't trust. Daniel, I whispered. He didn't argue. I stared at the long list of transfers. How much did he move? Mr. Reeves inhaled sharply. All of it. The words hit the air like a falling weight. Not one withdrawal, not a portion. All. Why would my own son do this? I asked under my breath. He hesitated, then answered with quiet honesty. Because whoever convinced him to do it had something he wanted more than loyalty. Clara. Her name didn't have to be spoken to fill the space between us. Mr. Reeves leaned closer. This card, and you, are the only things standing between them and complete control. When you walked away from your son's house last night, I don't think you realized how much they've already taken. I felt the truth settle in my bones like the cold outside. Is there a way to recover the funds? I asked. He nodded, but with caution. Yes, but it will trigger a deeper audit. Investigators, financial review. It will expose everything your husband shielded. Good, I answered. He studied me for a moment, really studied me, as if to understand the woman standing in front of him. You're not surprised? No, I replied. I'm done being surprised. He straightened his posture. Then we need to print the full report. As he moved to the printer, he glanced to the side suddenly, as if sensing something outside the glass doors. His eyes flickered with alarm. Ma'am, whatever happens next, don't leave this card behind. I slipped it into my coat and closed my hand around it. He handed me the documents. Be careful. Someone close to you isn't who you think. I met his eyes. I know. I turned toward the exit, reports tucked under my arm, the card against my chest, and walked out into the cold. The wind hit me again, but this time I didn't feel it. I walked out of the bank with the numbers still burning in my mind. Those weren't savings. That was a fortune my husband hid for me, and Daniel tried to erase it like he erased me from his house. The winter air cut through my coat, but I didn't slow down. My shoes scratched the pavement as I headed toward the main road. Every step sharpened the anger inside me. I wasn't confused anymore. I was awake. A car horn snapped behind me. I turned. A dark sedan pulled to the curb. The window rolled down. Helen, is that really you? My breath caught, not from fear, but from recognition. Henry. He leaned forward with the same calm eyes I remembered from years ago. He wasn't family, but he had been my husband's closest friend, one of the few honest men Michael kept around. After Michael died, Henry disappeared without explanation. And now, on the day I discovered the truth, he returned. I stepped closer. Where have you been all these years? Looking for pieces your husband didn't want anyone to find. His voice held weight, like he'd carried a secret long enough. My heart pushed hard against my ribs. You knew about the card. Henry nodded once. Michael trusted me with everything except the access. That was yours. and Daniel made sure you never used it." I exhaled slowly. He threw me out today. No warning, no shame. He wanted me gone. Henry's jaw tightened. Clara's influence. She's been pushing him for months. Of course. Clara, the one who smiled at me like I was a burden, who made every holiday colder, who whispered into my son's ear until my own child couldn't see me anymore. She wanted the house, I muttered. She wanted the money. She wanted me erased. "Because she thinks Daniel deserves what Michael left behind," Henry replied, eyes narrowing. "But your husband didn't choose Daniel. He chose you." I searched Henry's expression. "Michael left that much money. Why didn't he tell me?" He tapped the steering wheel once, thinking. "He believed someone was watching him. He told me things didn't add up. He wanted you protected without drawing attention." "That's not protection," I whispered. "That's leaving me blind." "It kept you alive," Henry answered, steady. "Michael suspected someone would use your trust against you. And someone did." The truth stung, because it matched everything I'd lived through. Daniel's controlling tone, Clara's micro-attacks, the way they treated me like I was disposable. Henry opened the passenger door. "Get in. I'm taking you somewhere Michael wanted you to see." I didn't rush. "Why now? Why come back today of all days?" "Because I've been tracking something," Henry explained. "Daniel made movements behind your back. Bank inquiries, legal questions, property valuations. Someone tipped me off that he intended to push you out before Christmas." "And you didn't intervene?" "I didn't know when he'd strike," Henry replied. "I thought I had more time." I studied him. He looked older, tired, but there was no deception in his face, only urgency. I climbed into the car. The door closed with a heavy click, sealing me into a moment that felt like the first step towards something dangerous. Henry pulled into traffic. "What exactly did the banker show you?" I kept my voice low but firm. "A blocked account with more money than I could imagine, and a message from Michael." My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. "He left instructions for me. Something about danger." Henry's hands tightened around the wheel. "Did you open the rest?" "Not yet. He mentioned a second location." "That's where we're going." The city blurred through the window as we drove into the older district, the part of town Michael used to avoid when Daniel was young. The streets narrowed. The streetlights flickered. I turned toward Henry. Why didn't Michael tell me the whole truth? "He worried the truth would break your heart," Henry answered quietly. "He told me you always believed the best in people. He didn't want you to see the worst until you were ready." I let out a small, cold breath. "Well, today was enough to teach me I'm done believing lies." Henry nodded. "Good. You'll need that clarity." We turned down an alley behind an abandoned row of shops. Henry parked beside a rusted gate. A sign hung crookedly, "Monroe Storage and Freight." My fingers curled slightly. "This belongs to Clara's family." "Yes," Henry replied, "and that's not a coincidence." A chill ran down my spine. Not fear, but understanding. Daniel married into a family with access to Michael's old business records. "And influence," Henry added, "more than you know." He stepped out of the car and motioned for me to follow. The ground felt colder here, like the air held secrets. "Michael stored files here years before he died," Henry said. "He told me if anything ever happened to him, I was to bring you." My heart beat harder. "What kind of files?" "Proof," Henry replied. "Financial transfers, sealed contracts, communications, things Michael couldn't destroy, but couldn't keep at home." He unlocked the side door with a small metal key. The hinges groaned as it opened. Inside, dust floated through thin light beams. Metal shelves lined the walls, old boxes stacked to the ceiling. Henry led me to a corner where a single wooden crate sat untouched, sealed with a thick strip of tape. He placed his hand on top of it. "He left this for you." My breath slowed. "For me alone?" "Yes, and Daniel cannot find out what's inside." I crossed my arms tightly. Daniel doesn't get to control anything anymore. The anger in my voice didn't shake. It settled. Henry looked at me with something between respect and caution. "You're stronger than when I last saw you." I had to be. He lifted the lid. The crate opened with a soft crack. Inside, folders, a small safe, and a notebook with Michael's handwriting across the front. My name. Just my name. A cold calm settled over me, the same calm I felt when Daniel shut the door in my face, the kind of calm that turns pain into calculation. Henry rested a hand on the crate's edge. "Once you read what's in here, nothing will be the same." "I don't expect it to be," I answered. I reached inside and laid my hand on the notebook. The moment my fingers touched it, I knew. This was no accident, no coincidence, no random discovery. This was Michael's final move, and now it was my turn to play mine. Henry moved a metal stool toward the crate and placed the small safe on top of it. The safe wasn't modern. It looked like something Michael would have bought 20 years ago. Heavy, simple, stubborn. "Your husband left a combination," Henry murmured, holding out a folded note. I didn't take it. I already knew the numbers. "Try 1218, I whispered. Henry looked up. "Your anniversary?" "No, the day Michael confronted Daniel for the first time." My jaw tightened. Daniel didn't know I heard them. Henry tested the numbers. The lock clicked open. Inside the safe sat a small black recorder wrapped in a plastic bag, a USB drive, and a single envelope with my name written in the same sharp handwriting Michael used whenever he wanted my attention. My pulse slowed. Everything inside me went still. Michael had left his voice behind. Henry stepped back. "Take your time." I didn't need time. I removed the recorder and held it in both hands. It felt heavier than it should, like Michael had poured everything he feared into it. I pressed play. For a moment, there was only static. Then Michael's voice filled the cold storage room. "Helen, if you're hearing this, then everything I tried to prevent finally reached you." My breath hitched, but I didn't let it take me down. His tone wasn't emotional. It was deliberate, like he knew panic would only distract me. "You trusted the wrong people," Michael continued. "Not because you're naive, but because you believe in loyalty more than anyone I've known. Daniel, he used that against you." Henry lowered his head. I didn't look at him. My focus stayed locked on the recorder. "I didn't tell you about the account," Michael went on, "because I knew Daniel was watching. He started asking me questions years before I died, questions a son shouldn't ask unless someone is pushing him." Clara. Of course. Clara had been in the family for 5 years, but she acted like she was born to the role. That perfect smile, the polite comments, the slow poison she fed my son. Michael's voice sharpened. "Helen, you must understand. Daniel wasn't alone. Clara's family, her parents, her uncle, they approached me once. I refused them. 3 months later, my brakes failed." I blinked. Hard. Henry's hand gripped the back of the stool. "You never knew that part?" "No." My voice barely rose above a whisper. "He told me it was an old car," Michael continued. "They wanted access to the funds your father left. They wanted influence. They used Daniel's resentment to get close. I tried to warn him, but he chose them." Static crackled again. Then, "I know this hurts you. It hurts me to say it. But Daniel is no longer the boy you raised. He let them reshape him." A cold pressure wrapped around my spine. I steadied myself by leaning on the crate. Henry motioned to pause the recording, but I lifted a hand sharply. "Don't." The tape rolled on. "I knew something would happen to you after I passed. I didn't know when. That's why I left Henry with instructions. He's one of the few I trust. If he's with you, it means he kept his promise." Henry swallowed hard. Michael's voice lowered. "There's something else, Helen. Something I didn't tell you even in my last letter. Clara's family isn't just after the inheritance. They're tied to larger dealings, illegal dealings. And someone above them wants silence. My silence. And eventually, yours." A chill ran down the back of my neck, but my mind sharpened like glass. The recording shifted. Papers rustled. Michael exhaled shakily. If anything happens to me, go to the storage facility. The files in the crate will prove everything. But Helen, you must be careful. They won't stop now. Daniel knows you're the only one left with access. Static. Then Michael's final words, slow and heavy. And Helen, I'm sorry. I should have trusted you sooner. You're stronger than all of them combined. Don't let them bury what's left of me. The tape clicked to a stop. Silence swallowed the room. My hands closed around the recorder like I was holding Michael's heartbeat. When I finally looked up, Henry was watching me with a mix of respect and worry. You okay? No. My voice didn't shake. But I'm awake. He nodded once. I opened the envelope next. Inside was a single sheet. Michael's handwriting again, but rushed this time. Helen, if they reach you before Henry does, destroy nothing. Expose everything. And if Daniel stands in your way, remember he made his choice long before you knew. M. My chest tightened, not with grief, but with something sharper. Henry moved closer. There's more in the crate. The files, contracts, email printouts, payment logs. Enough to prove what Michael investigated. And enough to destroy Daniel's in-laws, I replied, flipping through the stack of folders. Henry's expression darkened. They won't let you walk away with this. I'm not walking, I muttered. I'm marching. He let out a breath. Not relief, but recognition. The Helen he once knew was gone. The woman standing here was different. You're handling this better than most people would. I don't have the luxury of falling apart. I tucked the recorder into my coat. They pushed me out of my own house. They laughed while they did it. Daniel looked at me like I was a piece of furniture. Henry's eyes narrowed. Then make them regret it. I intend to. I stood, straightened my coat, and grabbed the files. We expose everything, starting with Clara. Henry grabbed his keys. I know where her family holds their meetings. There's a place, an office building downtown. They think no one knows. We'll go there, I answered. But first... Henry paused. What do you need? A moment. He nodded and stepped outside. I stayed alone in the cold, dim room with the recorder still warm in my hand. Michael, I whispered, you trusted me too late. Then I slipped the recorder into my bag, tightened the strap, and walked out into the winter night. If Daniel thought throwing me out of the house ended something, he had no idea it had just begun. Henry drove us across town with the same calm he always carried, even when reality had already crossed the line from danger into something far worse. I held the folder full of evidence on my lap. The heater blew warm air, but my hands stayed cold. You're quiet, Henry noted, eyes still on the road. I'm thinking, I answered. Michael recorded that message knowing Daniel was already compromised. He must have realized they would come after me the moment he died. Henry tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He wanted you protected. He trusted you to finish what he couldn't. I will, I murmured, but I won't forgive him for underestimating me. We turned onto an industrial street. The warehouse stood alone at the end, a large, weathered building with rust climbing its metal walls. Henry parked near a side entrance. This is where Michael stored the rest of his files, he muttered. He kept anything too sensitive to leave at home or the office. I stepped out of the car. The cold air cut across my face, but it helped me focus. Anyone else knows about this place? I asked. Just me, Henry replied. And Michael. Daniel never came here. Good, I muttered. Let's keep it that way. Henry unlocked the door. The hinges groaned as if the building hadn't been disturbed in years. Inside, the air smelled like dust and metal. Rows of shelves reached high toward the ceiling. Boxes, folders, and old computers lined every row. I paused. This is all his work? Henry nodded. Every case he touched, every favor he chased, every lead he refused to drop. I walked slowly between the shelves. Michael wasn't reckless. If he kept everything, he must have known it would all matter someday. Henry flicked on a small lamp near a wooden table. He left a system. You'll understand once you see it. I approached the table. A large map was pinned to the wall above it. Red pins, blue notes, strings connecting names I recognized and names I didn't. My eyes landed on one label, Monroe Holdings, Clara's family. Of course. Henry opened a metal drawer and handed me another stack of documents. Michael found inconsistencies in their tax reports, money flowing into accounts overseas. Money he suspected was tied to bribery. I flipped through the papers, and Daniel helped them cover it up. Worse, Henry muttered. Daniel signed several of the transfers. The folder nearly slipped from my hands. He used Michael's passwords, I whispered. He forged his signature. Henry didn't respond. The silence was answer enough. I set the documents on the table and steadied myself. Henry, Michael didn't die from a heart attack, did he? Henry hesitated, just long enough for my stomach to twist. No. His voice dropped. He was poisoned. Slow release. Undetectable, unless someone knew what to look for. My throat tightened, and no one looked. He handled everything alone, Henry explained. He didn't want to put you in danger. He didn't even want to put me in danger. He shouldn't have kept me in the dark. Henry touched my shoulder lightly. He loved you, but love makes people foolish. I nodded once, just enough to acknowledge the truth, not enough to let it swallow me. I returned my focus to the files. If Daniel helped them poison Michael, he'll help them silence me too. Henry crossed his arms. Then we need to stay ahead. I moved toward the back shelf where Michael had placed several locked boxes. Each box had a label, dates, initials, and short descriptions. One grabbed my attention. HH. Final message. Do not open until necessary. Henry, I called. Your initials. He approached slowly. I didn't know he left anything else. Open it. His hands shook slightly as he unlocked the box with a key tied to his belt. Inside were 3 items, a sealed envelope, an audio recorder identical to mine, and a USB drive with a red sticker. Henry opened the envelope and unfolded a single sheet of paper. His jaw tightened. What does it say? I asked. He inhaled. He wrote, If Clara's family reaches Helen before we reveal the evidence, use the drive. It holds the failsafe. Failsafe? I pressed. Henry held up the USB. Michael gathered video surveillance, bank server logs, and signed statements from 2 people inside Monroe Holdings. This is enough to bring down half their operation. And Daniel? I asked. Henry pointed to a separate folder labeled DH. Everything he forged, everything he transferred, every password he used. It's here. My chest ached, not from grief, but from betrayal so sharp it took my breath. He didn't just steal from his father, I muttered. He helped the people who killed him. Henry set the USB down with care. We can use this, but once we do, they'll know we're moving. I don't care, I replied. I'm done hiding. We loaded the files onto the table, organizing them by category. Michael's handwriting was everywhere, precise, methodical, patient. This isn't just evidence, I murmured. This is the truth he carried alone. Henry studied me. You don't have to carry it alone now. I'm not alone, I answered. But I am responsible. Michael trusted me with this. Henry nodded. What do you want to do first? I scanned the shelves again. I want to know every name on this map, every connection, every threat. But you also need to rest, Henry urged. You've been running on instinct. I shook my head. I rested for years. That's how Daniel got this far. I won't sleep again until Clara's family loses everything. Henry didn't argue. He just opened another folder. Then something crashed outside. Henry froze. I lifted a hand, signaling him to stay quiet. Another sound, closer. A footstep. Henry whispered, No one should know about this place. They do now, I whispered back. I turned off the lamp, grabbed the USB, the main folder, and Michael's recorder. Henry guided me toward the back door. Take the files, he urged. I'll distract them. I stopped. No, we leave together. Helen, I lost Michael because he was alone. I won't lose you too. The footsteps grew louder. Henry clenched his jaw and nodded. Follow me, slowly. We moved through the narrow aisle between shelves, careful not to bump anything. A shadow appeared under the main door. Then a voice, low, impatient. Open it. She has to be inside. My pulse thundered. Helen Hargrave was no longer a woman thrown out of her own home. I was the only person standing between a corrupt family and the truth they killed for, and they had just walked into my trap. The night after I retrieved the files, I drove to Daniel's house. Not to argue, not to scream. I came for truth. And truth, when delivered calmly, hits harder than any raised voice. The house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. I knocked once. The door opened halfway, and Daniel stood there in sweatpants, hair messy, eyes tired, like guilt had chewed through whatever confidence he used to wear. Mom, what are you doing here? His eyes flicked toward the driveway, checking if someone had followed me. Relax, I murmured. It's just me. He hesitated before stepping aside. I walked in. The house smelled like wine and old arguments. Clara sat at the dining table with a glass in hand, her smile thin as paper. This is unexpected, she remarked, crossing her legs slowly. We weren't planning on visitors. I didn't plan on being erased, I replied, removing my gloves. Daniel flinched. I placed my phone on the table, not touching it again, just letting it sit there, black screen reflecting their faces. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. Look, about Christmas Eve. That wasn't a mistake, I cut in. It was a decision. Clara raised a brow. We were overwhelmed. Emotions were high. It happens. Throwing your own mother out into the snow happens? I asked quietly. Her mouth twitched, but she didn't answer. Daniel sank into a chair. His knee bounced under the table. Why are you here? I took a breath. Slow, steady, deliberate. Because I need to show you something. I tapped my phone. A recording started playing. Michael's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, it means the people around our son have pushed him into the dark. And he followed. Clara's family has been draining the company through him. If he doesn't stop, everything we built will collapse. Daniel froze. Clara's fingers tightened around her wine glass until her knuckles turned white. Michael's voice continued, low and steady. Daniel, if you ever hear this, listen carefully. Greed wears a friendly face, but once you join it, you lose pieces of yourself you'll never get back. I calmly watched my son crumble. He covered his mouth with both hands. No. He didn't know. He couldn't have known. Clara shot him a sharp look. Turn that off. I didn't touch the phone. Michael made that recording weeks before he died. He knew exactly what you were walking into. Clara stood abruptly. This is manipulation. She's twisting. I turned my eyes toward her. The only thing twisting here is your story. She stiffened. Daniel shoved back his chair. Clara, you told me this was all legal, that the transfers were normal. You promised. Clara's jaw clenched. Don't start this. He pointed toward the phone with trembling fingers. He knew. My father knew. I leaned forward slightly. I found his files. Every transaction, every fraudulent shift, every signature you pushed Daniel to use. Clara's face drained of color. Daniel grabbed his hair. What did we do? What did we do? You didn't do anything, Clara snapped. Your mother is bluffing. She always plays the victim. I placed a folder on the table. The sound of it hitting the wood cut her off. Original ledgers, I murmured. Michael kept everything, and Henry stored the rest. Daniel stared at the folder like it was a loaded gun. Clara tried to reach for it, but Daniel slapped her hand away, not violently, just with the force of someone finally waking up. What else did you two hide from me? He whispered, voice shaking. She didn't answer. He looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time in years. Mom, what happens now? The question every guilty man eventually asks. Accountability, I replied. His shoulders dropped, as if a mountain had collapsed onto them. I ruined everything. No, I whispered. You let someone else steer your life until you lost track of the road. Clara scoffed. This is ridiculous. Daniel, don't let her. He cut her off for the first time in their marriage. Enough. She froze. Daniel sank back into the chair, hands shaking. How much trouble am I in? I took my phone, pressed one button, and a soft beep sounded. Daniel's head snapped up. Was this recorded? Every word, I answered. His mouth fell open. Clara's eyes widened in horror. You planned this. I nodded once. You planned my erasure. I planned my justice. Daniel grabbed the edge of the table. Mom, please, don't destroy me. You destroyed yourself the night you opened my husband's account. He broke, right in front of me. His breath hitched, his body slumped, and tears pushed into his eyes. Not the messy kind, but the kind that come when a man realizes he's been running downhill with no brakes. I didn't mean for any of this, he whispered. I didn't think it would go this far. Things always go far when you close your eyes, I replied. Clara's expression shifted from fear to anger. You won't get away with this. I already did. Her face hardened. She grabbed her purse, stormed to the door, and slammed it behind her. Daniel didn't chase her. He just sat there, collapsed, staring at the table like it held his entire life. I wish I had listened to Dad, he whispered. I wish. Wishing is for people who don't act, I said gently. You still have a choice, but choices have consequences. He lifted his red, defeated eyes. What do I do now? Face the truth, I replied, and let the rest fall where it needs to. He covered his face with both hands, and that was the moment I saw it. The instant regret that cuts deeper than any punishment. The moment he realized he lost the only war that mattered, the war against his own conscience. I reached Henry's car before he even finished parking. He opened the passenger door without a word. I slid in, shut it, and pulled the flash drive from my coat pocket. It felt heavier now, like it finally had a destination. Henry glanced over. You ready? I've been ready for 10 years. He nodded once and drove. No music, no small talk, only the sound of the tires cutting through wet pavement. When we stopped in front of the local news building, the neon sign flickered like it knew what was coming. Rachel Burns opened the door the moment we stepped inside. She was calm, sharp, and looked at me the way people look at survivors of something they don't understand yet. You sure you want this going public? She asked. I met her eyes. The truth doesn't work in private. She motioned us into her office. The lights were bright, the equipment already set up, a camera facing a simple chair. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just a chair and a microphone, perfect for the kind of truth that didn't need an introduction. Let me see what you have, Rachel urged. I handed her the drive. She plugged it in, scrolled, then stopped, her posture locked. Helen, this isn't just misuse of funds. This is a full financial pipeline. Offshore accounts, shell companies, fake subsidiaries. Your husband documented everything. He knew they'd come after him, I replied quietly. And your son, she added. He let this run under his name. I didn't blink. He earned what's coming. Rachel inhaled sharply, then pointed at the screen. These are federal-level crimes. The moment we air this, the investigation goes national. That's the point. Henry leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Let's finish what Michael started. Rachel turned back to me. I'll run a full exposé tonight. Prime hour, no names blurred. Good. She studied my face for a long second. You're calm. Most people shake before doing something like this. I shook the night they kicked me out, I replied. Not anymore. She nodded once and hit the intercom. Open the studio. We're recording. A young producer led me to the chair. The camera operator adjusted lights without looking at me. Professionals. Efficient. Detached. They didn't need to know my story to bring it to life. Rachel stood behind the camera. When I count to 3, start from the beginning. Keep it simple. I nodded. 1, 2, 3. My name is Helen Hargrave, I started, voice steady. Tonight, I'm showing you what my husband discovered before he died, and what my son helped cover." Rachel lifted a hand to pause me. A screen behind the camera lit up with the proof: bank statements, signatures, timestamps. It ran like a silent confession. She motioned for me to continue. "For years, someone moved money from the account of a dead man into a corporation my son controls. They used Michael's name, his history, his trust. And when I went to that house at Christmas, they told me I didn't belong there anymore." A producer murmured, "Jesus." I kept going. They took everything from me, but they forgot one thing. Michael planned for this. He knew the truth would need time, and now that time is up. Rachel stepped closer. "Do you want to address Daniel directly?" I didn't hesitate. "No, he knows what he did. This isn't for him. This is for the people who think silence is safer than honesty." The room went completely still. Rachel gave a firm nod. "That's enough. You can breathe." I didn't need to. I felt more awake than I had in years. She closed the recorder and turned to her team. "We're going live in 30 minutes. No delays, no edits." Someone asked, "Should we notify the station manager?" "No," Rachel replied. "If they get cold feet, they'll stall it. We run it clean." Henry looked at me. "You sure you're ready for the fallout?" "I'm not hiding from my son's choices." He offered a subtle smile. "Michael would be proud." We walked to the newsroom where monitors lined the walls. The countdown clock reached 30 seconds. Rachel slid on her earpiece, straightened her blazer, and entered the live broadcast with the calm of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The screen turned red. Breaking news. Hargrave Trust under federal investigation. Then my face appeared, tired, calm, unshaken. Rachel's voice narrated the evidence. Images flashed. Documents filled the screen. The paper trail was undeniable. 15 seconds later, a live feed cut in. Daniel outside his office, hands cuffed, escorted by federal agents. He looked confused, angry, lost. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Hargrave, did you steal from your father's trust?" Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the cameras like the truth had finally found him. Henry whispered beside me, "There it is." I watched the screen without blinking. Not revenge, not satisfaction. Just truth. Clean, sharp, final. Rachel closed the segment with a line that felt like the world exhaling. "Tonight, justice begins." She looked over her shoulder at me from the studio window. I offered a small nod. She returned one. Henry placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did it." "No," I murmured. "I finished what Michael started." We stepped out of the station into the quiet street. Snow fell in thin lines, cold but soft. For the first time since Christmas night, the air didn't hurt. It felt like the truth had weight, and I could finally set it down. Henry drove me home in silence. The snow had stopped falling. When I entered my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, watching the city breathe. I pulled out the red envelope Michael left me. I finally opened it. His handwriting was strong. "Helen, don't hate Daniel. Hate the greed that stole him. And now, live. Not for revenge. Live for the peace you deserve." I folded the letter. For the first time in years, the silence in the room didn't feel lonely. It felt free. The next morning, Henry drove me to the cemetery. The air was sharp and clean. We walked to Michael's grave. I placed a single white rose on the snow. "They used your name to steal," I whispered to the stone. "They used our son to cover it. But the truth is out now. Everyone knows." Henry stood back, giving me space. He would be proud. "I didn't do it for pride," I replied. "I did it so I could sleep again." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Daniel. "Mom, please. I don't know what to do." I looked at the message. Then I turned off the phone and put it away. I stepped back from the grave. "I finished your part, Michael," I said to the wind. "Now I'll finish mine." Henry looked at me. "Ready to go?" Yes. I turned around and walked back toward the truck. The sun was breaking through the winter clouds. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking away from a fight. I was walking toward myself. I walked through that quiet morning knowing one simple truth. Life doesn't fall apart in a single night, and it doesn't rebuild in one either. It happens in small steps. The first step is opening your eyes. The second is refusing to close them again. For years, I let silence settle over everything that hurt. I let excuses replace honesty. I let love turn into a shield for people who never protected me back. But the world changes the moment you decide you're done being erased. I didn't win because the federal agents took my son away. I didn't win because the news carried my story. I won because I stood up in the middle of winter with nothing left and chose truth over fear. And truth answered. It always does. Sometimes it answers quietly. Sometimes it shakes the room. Sometimes it shows up years after you think it's gone. But it never disappears. Not if you keep walking toward it. If you've ever felt pushed aside. If someone ever made you feel small. If you've ever stood alone in a room full of people who should have loved you. I want you to remember something I learned the hard way. Your worth isn't up for debate. Your voice isn't a favor someone can grant you. And your truth is never too late. Thank you for staying with me through this journey, through every cold night and every quiet step toward freedom. Stories like this matter because people like you understand what it means to survive the things no one else saw. If this story touched you, if you felt your own strength somewhere inside it, I hope you stay with us for the next one. There's always another chapter, another voice, another reminder that none of us walk through these battles alone. And if you want more stories of courage, justice, and the kind of strength that grows in silence, you can follow this channel, Grandma Life Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I'm grateful for every person who finds comfort in them. Until the next video, take care of your heart, trust your truth, and remember, some lights don't fade. They grow stronger every time the world tries to dim them. I'll see you in the next story.